All right, welcome. So try this one out. Ignore the numbers. Also, I want to say these are from like pre 2019. So not something you probably came across unless you're someone that's like, hey, I did every practice Regents you posted, and then I started doing more. Um, Before we go over this in a sec, how could you do this in a calculator? Before we go over this, one thing we'll talk about too is, like I said, some of the logistical stuff. What should you bring? All that stuff with the Regents for Wednesday. How do you get absolute value on the calculator? The math button. Scroll to the right for the number menu. It just says NUM. I usually say num, and then it's ABS, the first one. Or you could hit second 0, I believe, for catalog, and ABS is one of the first few. Math print. Okay, so what did we get for this one? What did we get? What did we get? What's the range of this function? Sometimes these are like surprisingly weird domain and range questions when it just gives you a random equation. We tend to struggle with this a little bit. I've seen square root functions with this. We've seen quadratic questions with this. First of all, when we talk about range, what are we talking about? Do we know what the word range means? Yeah, the y value. So this question is basically saying, all right, this graph is going to be a V shape, right? So the domain would be all real numbers, but where is that cutoff for the range? The range doesn't go on forever, right? What I like to usually do for these, if I'm struggling, type this into my calculator, get a rough sketch of it, look at the table of values, or if you're knowledgeable with transformation rules, you could just simply use that. X plus 3 inside of the rule is going to shift it 3 units to the left. We'll add little tick marks here. Okay, that plus 3 moves it 3 to the left, and the minus 5 is going to move it 5 down. So it's going to look something like this. This is a very crude sketch, but you get the idea. So we move 3 to the left and 5 down. So what would the range of this be? Choice 1, -5 to infinity. The difference between 1 and 2 is a very small one. So it does boil down to, do you know the difference between a bracket and a parentheses? The bracket tells me, hey, I could actually touch or equal this point here. My line's a little off. A parentheses wouldn't really make sense for absolute value. That would be like an open circle or something at the vertex. Like, oh, it doesn't quite touch there. That's more so found in like a piecewise. You don't see that in a normal function, like that open circle. Okay, even square root functions have a bracket, right? Because it does touch at that 0. How did we do with this? A lot of people said choice 1, I see. Very good. Sorry, so the opposite thing. Yeah, the IHOP rule only applies to stuff inside the rule. So inside the bars, inside the square. So if it was a quadratic, this would also be 3 to the left, right? It's inside the square, underneath the radical, inside the radical, right? Those move left to right. Moving up and down is just straightforward. So if it says -5, that's down 5. But even if you forget that, this is where typing into your calculator, hitting graph, just to see a sketch. It will maybe jog your memory a little bit, maybe seeing the table of values. So hitting second graph, hey, let me check out what the table looks like. Ooh, I see you could quickly rule out choices 3 and 4. Ooh, I'm seeing negatives in the y value, so it can't be 3 or 4. And then it's just a matter of, do you know the difference between a bracket and a parentheses? Alrighty. All right, let's try one of these. We've talked about a lot of calculator alternatives for these. Roman numeral questions, always scary looking right off the bat, right? A lab technician used T of M, blah, 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 to model her research. Consider these expressions. Which of these are equivalent to T of M? Which of those are equivalent to T of M? We'll talk about a real way of doing this. We'll talk about some shortcuts. You should be familiar with shortcuts by now with this topic, but let's see what we get. And while you guys are trying this one out, don't spoil it yet in the chat if you are doing it. I'll tell you when to type in your answers. Some basic things for Wednesday, and we'll talk more about this in class tomorrow. Not everyone is here, obviously. There's like 30 something people here. Things to bring with you. You do need a pen and a pencil, technically. This is, going down to it, like it doesn't really matter. But like if you look, some of you even notice this in the booklets already, it will say in the instructions, like, please use pen for this. You're technically supposed to do all written questions in pen, except for graphs. So anything on a grid would be done in pencil. This way, if you make a mistake, you could erase it. Technically, written questions are supposed to be done in pen besides that. This is a terrible strategy, but some people do this accidentally. Some people do this on purpose, which they quickly realize was a mistake. Never do this. I've had a few students tell me this. They're like, oh, I did it all in pencil, and then I just traced it over. It takes a lot more time than you think. If you're like, hey, I'm going to do all the written questions in pencil and then just go over it, that takes a lot of time. So don't do that. I get what they're saying because they're afraid if to make a mistake. If I write a bunch of work and I realize in pen it's wrong, just go like this. Just put an X through it, cross it off, whatever it may be. It doesn't matter if it looks good or not. So yeah, you do have to use a pen. Now, if you realize Wednesday afternoon, you're like, oh my God, I did the whole written test in pencil. Does it really matter? Are you going to get a 0? No. It's a technicality thing, but I've never seen an issue of like, hey, let's give this person a 0 because they used the wrong kind of ink. You're not supposed to be able to use highlighters. You're not using like any weird color pens, like pink or, highlighter color. It's supposed to be like blue or black ink. Why did I say technically? Technically, you're supposed to use a pen, but like practically, does it matter? No. Like Mr. Nello, myself, any of the math teachers, we're just still going to grade it. just follow the instructions. Don't translate that. I probably shouldn't have said that. Like, still, you're doing it in pen. I don't want the takeaway from this to be like, oh, let's just all do it in pencil because he said it doesn't matter. You're still doing it in pen. I was just saying I don't want anyone to panic if they realize they forgot. We should get the scores back pretty quick. We're going to be grading it in the building. So like Friday, I probably won't be in class. I'm going to be grading the 8th grade. Some of the 8th grade teachers are going to be grading you guys. I would say probably by next Monday or Tuesday. Multiple choice, we know really like within a day or two. They scan the multiple choice in the main office. Are these types of questions common? Emily's asking, like this one that we're doing? Yeah, we've seen this a few times. Not with Roman numerals all the time. That always makes it a little bit tougher, but we've seen this question a bunch. That's the other thing I tried to do with these screenshots. Hopefully you realize this if you've been attending these, if you've been doing all the green book tests, your mock regents, some of the packet ones we've been looking at in class, you start to notice a lot of patterns with like, wait, I haven't seen this question, but we've done like 4 similar examples. Yeah, this would be, I would say, on the harder side for this topic. So this is an equivalence question, right? What topic is this really applying? I would call this like exponent rules. So that's the real way to do it. Does anyone want to share in the chat what they got as an answer? I just guess put 1, 2, or 3, or 4. You don't have to do the Roman numerals. Choice 3. So 1 and 3 are equivalent to that expression. Let's see. So how could you do this? Or does anyone want to explain how they did it? I would say there's 2 real ways to do it. 2 realistic ways. Calculator. Can we be more specific? Exponent rules, Matthew. Yeah, we'll talk about the exponent rule way. Yeah, y equals, anytime you have an equivalence question, make sure you type in the real one first. So type this into y1. Just be careful that all has to be in the exponent. And then type in your choices. Here we only have 3 of them, so type in the 3 remaining ones underneath. And then you're going to go to your tables. So second graph, we should know that past the first day of school. Second graph, and now I'm just going to look to see which of these tables match the first one. They should be an exact match, okay? And that will be for 1 and 3. So 1 and 3 are equivalent. They're the same thing. They produce the same outputs. Yeah, John, that could work. Sometimes that just gives you false positives, though. For example, sometimes you may plug in a 0 and it produces the same output for all of them, even though they're all not equal. Like y equals 2x and y equals 3x. If I plug a 0 in, it seems like they both work. So your table is doing that, 10 times at the same time. Yeah, around 8. Okay. What's the other way of doing this one? Knowing your exponent rules, you can break this apart. Okay, so I can break apart 3 to the 2m plus 1 using my product rule. We usually add these together, so breaking it apart, I'm separating them, right? They have the same base. And now, with that 2 out front, I can combine, this is just a 3, right? 3, the first power is just a 3. I could do 2 times 3 is 6, so Roman numeral 1 makes sense. And now, how could you get Roman numeral 3? So you have this, right? We just learned how you could rewrite this. I could rewrite this base using my double exponent rule to look like this, right? Breaking it apart. Once again, these questions instead of dealing with exponent rules the real way, they kind of like decompose them. It's like you're doing them backwards. The power rule says to multiply a double exponent, right? We broke it apart. And now 3 squared would just be 9. So 6 times 9 to the m power. Okay. Equivalence question. This one, or even similar ones to this, maybe it doesn't even involve exponents. Y equals is a good go-to. They could be scary, but there's no reason why anyone should get this wrong because you have that fallback. This was the real way of doing it. If that didn't click with you, it is a little confusing knowing exactly like what moves to make. Again, equivalence on the calculator tables could work. All right. Alrighty, let's do a written. So this would be a 2-pointer. Right, you should be able to recognize, like, all right, this doesn't seem like a 4-pointer. Obviously, definitely not a 6. So it says, use the method of completing the square to determine the exact values for x. So two reasons why I screenshot this. Okay, completing the square being required. They even tell you, kind of a good thing, right? It's like eliminating the decision for you. So CTS, we've seen that a bunch. Hey, they're asking me to do CTS and they're requiring it. I guess that's the same thing. And also the word exact. What does exact tell us? Can anyone tell us what that means in the chat when it says, hey, find the exact values? They're from a few different ones, Mitesh, like June 2019, 2018 stuff. I went through a bunch of older ones. Yeah, leave it as a radical. When something says exact, your answer should have a radical in it. Don't put 2.54, dot, 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 dot. Even if you put 10 decimals down, that's not exact because your calculator is cutting it off somewhere. So if you see exact, it means radical. Or if it's like a linear equation, it could mean put a fraction instead of rounding. Okay? When something says exact, you should not be rounding. Even if you copy down your calculator screen, your calculator technically rounded as well. Simplest radical form. Very good, Matthew. Yep. It would also be very strange if they put that and it works out to be like 2 and 5. So it's also kind of a hint like, hey, this is going to be irrational. They wouldn't phrase it that way. Okay, so let's do CTS. With CTS, how I like to do it, I'm going to move the 6 over to start. So we're going to have -6 on the right. Okay, and now we're going to add that magic number to both sides. So what would be the magic number here? $16, very good. It's always going to be half of the middle term. You could ignore the sign because you're going to be squaring it. So half of this squared. For once, we're saying ignore the sign because it doesn't matter. Whether it's positive or negative, you're squaring it. It's always going to be plus. Okay? Now, on the right, do your math carefully. 10, right? -6 plus 16. And now should be the point where this is a bubble squared. It's what we call a perfect trinomial. Just like how 25 is a perfect number and we could write it as 5 times 5, this is a perfect trinomial because we could write it as a bubble times a duplicate bubble, right? And you don't need to sit and do sum product. Well, we'll go inside of the bubble. I wrote 6 is 16. What goes inside of the bubble? X minus 4, very good. Again, I always say you don't need to sit and do some product because you're breaking it into two equal groups. So -8 split in half just becomes -4. There's always going to be that 2-to-1 ratio or relationship there. You could do some product if you want, but that's just a shortcut. Now, technically, we're done with CTS. That's what I think people mistake. They think like this whole we did CTS. So now it's actually another strategy. What are we going to do to finish this off? We completed the square, but we didn't find the answer yet. What do we do to finish it from here? Take the square root. Square root. That's what that says. Take the square root. Okay, taking the square root will cancel out the square. Square root of 10, I'm going to put plus minus so I don't forget. And last thing, I'm just going to move the 4 over. 10 can't be simplified. Technically, it doesn't say simplest radical form. So if it did simplify, I guess you wouldn't need to. Exact values, again, just mean leave it as a radical. Now, even if you type this into your calculator, whatever this is, let's say 7 something and 1 point something, or less than 1, you would lose a point. You're doing more work, but this is what they want. Hey, that's exact. Me typing in some decimal is rounding. Good rule, 4 plus or minus square root 10. Dots, Connor. Dots doesn't apply here. Whenever you have something squared and you want to solve it, you're taking the square root. So CTS shouldn't involve factoring, aside from, I guess, the sum product you're technically doing when you go from the trinomial to the bubble. Okay, good question. Would I expect you to, a question like this, where they're asking you to do CTS? Definitely. We see it a lot more recently. They used to not say anything, and I guess maybe people just weren't doing CTS and just doing quad formula all the time. So it seems like a very common trend to kind of force your hand to do it. If it doesn't say anything, then you can do whatever you want. Just says, hey, solve this quadratic. Oh, should we get to that? All right, I'm going to skip a little bit. So what's another thing that I could pretty much guarantee that you're going to see? A part 3 question like this. Now, don't panic. I would say this is a nice, like, if you're feeling a little uneasy on Wednesday, maybe like skip to this one. This is just that typing it all into your calculator question. Lin Reg, we call this line of best fit. You're going to see this every single year ever has this question. So you're going to see it's going to ask for the linear regression equation, rounding to some decimal. I've seen 10th, I've seen 100th. I think I've seen 1,000th like once. Most commonly it's 100th. And then it's going to ask for the correlation, and then it may ask you to explain it. You're going to see that. Whatever the variables are could change, obviously, but are you going to see this? Definitely. And it's basically a free 4 points. Yeah, we'll do a factoring question. I think I have one. So I'll make one up. Try this one out if you have a calculator, obviously. If you don't, just as a quick reminder, how are you doing this? You're basically typing in the top row as L1, the bottom row is L2. And then linreg can be found by hitting the stat button, scroll to the right for calc, and then I believe it's choice 4, linreg. Diagnostics should be turned on your calculator when you get it. The other thing, you're not allowed to bring your own calculator. You might as well leave it at home. You may want to bring it in if you're doing last minute studying or something, but you're not going to be allowed to use your own calculator on the test. You're going to be using one of the yellow school ones. Everybody across the board. They're all reset, but they do make sure that diagnostics is turned back on for you. How do we know what value is X or Y? I just assume, Matthew, they call it P and F of P, so technically they are. Wait, we're not doing the lin reg one? Yeah, it says right here. Diagnostics will be turned on for you. If they're not, just hit the mode button and scroll to like, I think it's right below the clock, but it should be turned on. You'll know if diagnostics are not turned on because when you do this question, you won't see an R value. But they should all be turned on. Again, mode, and then it's like the settings button basically. And then if you scroll, I think it's right below the clock, it says stat diagnostics, you turn it on. Second mode. Okay, what did we get for the equation here? Just be careful. Anytime it's good practice, if they tell you to call something, call it this letter, call it that, make sure you use that. Like if you wrote y equals blah, 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 and x here, would they take off? Maybe. So you don't want to leave that room for doubt. Probably not, but yeah, again, you don't want to leave it open to interpretation. Let's see. I'll trust Emily here, negative 0.79. I would just use P, Emily, like I was just saying. They did tell you to use P as your variable. A little weird. This is f of P and P. You don't think you should trust me? Did we get that, guys? You would need a calculator to do this. Okay, and what did we get for the correlation question? R equals, or was that negative 0.95 or 0.95? That's R squared. Negative 0.95? It doesn't matter if you put R equals or not. If you just put negative 0.95, it's fine. And then how would you explain this? How would we explain strong negative, Isabella says? Yep, excellent. Strong because it's close to the boundary, right? 1 or negative 1, doesn't matter. Negative because obviously it's a negative number. And then anytime you see in context, you just basically reference the nouns in the problem. So you say it's strong, negative, between, sale price, and homes available. You just literally talk about, don't even talk about them, just throw those nouns in with an end in the middle. I got 249.95. Did I write that down wrong? If yours was slightly off, sometimes it's just you hit a number in wrong, you typed it in wrong. So just be careful. What I like to do for these, after I'm done typing, I'll hold my calculator kind of close to my paper and just do one of these looking back and forth. That happens all the time. You hit like 22 instead of 220. I think it happened to a few people on the mock Regents. Rational, we always just say the first 5 letters, ratio of 2 integers. So Kathy might not have diagnostics on. This is question 35. Yeah, but I don't even remember what year this is from. Oh, this was when there was 37. So this would be like on your test, it's probably going to be like 33 or 34. It's like the second to last one usually, or third to last. The test breakdown, 24 multiple choice and 11 written. 6, 4, 1. 6 2-pointers, those are quick. 4 4-pointers and 1 6-point question. All right, a recursive problem. I think we did not this exact one, but a very similar one not too long ago. So this shouldn't take you very long. I'll be right back. I just have to step out. Don't type your answers in the chat, so hold on.
I don't want to like this.
You want some This was, again, these are from like older exams. It's probably 2018.
See you later there.
What did you say?
See you later.
See you later, alligator.
I want to start.
You're neater than some of my students try. All right, what did we get for this? So this one says A1 equals 5, and A sub n plus 1 equals 2 times A sub n minus 7. So this is one of those assembly line type questions where you do have to do these one at a time.
Who are you talking to?
I'm talking to my students. They're in the computer.
Who are you students?
They're listening. It's like listening on the radio. It's kind of best to think about like what's happening. So what's happening here is you're multiplying the previous one by 2 and then subtracting 7 each time. So starting with 5 times 2 minus 7. Okay, so the second term would be 3. So this is going to keep getting smaller and smaller. What did we get for the fourth term? Char, can you say Eloise?
Always.
That was a good pronunciation. What did we get?
What did we get?
You just repeating after me? You say Elijah?
Elijah.
Elijah?
Elijah.
Elijah?
Elijah.
Can you say Emily? Yeah, you know how to say that. Can I erase this real quick? I have to see the question. Keep clicking. What did we get for this one? Okay, ready for 1 sec? Hold on. What did we get? Choice 1. Here's a pen. Here. Can you circle this part? Oop, it's 2. Let's make it skinny.
No, I don't want to.
Can you circle this number? So yeah, we would do times, close enough. We would get 3, then we'd get -1 for the third term. And then, yeah, -9. You should have gotten -9 for these. I would say for whatever reason, this is like what they like to choose from sequences. I know this is like the hardest version of a sequence question. Maybe we'll get lucky and we'll get the one where it's like, you could just basically do it in your calculator. It's like, oh, the common ratio is 2, find the fifth term. And you just have to sit there doing times 2 a few times. But these other recursives, I call these, are best figured out by doing like a little assembly line, by doing one at a time. Don't panic when you see that like little subscript n+1, or sometimes they call it n-1. That just again means previous versus next. Previous versus next. All right, Char, can you say goodnight to everyone? You say goodbye?
Good night.
Say good luck on your test.
Good.
All right. I'm gonna put hold on. I'm gonna put the next question up for you guys. You could take a look at this one. I'll be right back in 1 minute. Another multiple choice. All right, back. So we'll take a look at this. An equation question. We always find these a little silly for multiple choice because technically you don't need to know how to solve this. You could plug in. It might take you a little bit of time. Okay, so let's solve it the real way. Then I guess we can talk about some alternatives here. What would I do? I would distribute here. We'll get 4x minus 28. We'll get 0.3x plus 0.6 plus 2.11. That's going to be 2.71. I'm going to bring the 0.3x over to the left. And I'm going to add the 28 to the right to get, what is that, 30.71 and then 3.7x. And then it's just 30.71 divided by 3.7. And what did we get for this one? Uno? 8.3? Very good. Yeah, so what could you do? You could manually plug it in, right? Seeing, hey, these both work out to the same thing. You could use y equals. It gets a little messy, I guess, because it's not an integer. You'd have to use like intersect. It's probably fastest just to solve it compared to any calculator trick. You'd get lucky if you're doing plugging in because it happens to work with the first one. But that could end up taking 3 or 4 tries. Okay. I think I skipped something. Did I skip? Okay. I want to do this together. Graphing a system of inequalities for a few reasons. One, this was the question we struggled with the most on the mock. We were just rusty with it. I don't think these are like outrageously difficult. I would say there's probably like, I'm making this up, educated guess, like an 80% chance you'd see something like this. Does it happen every year, like a Lin-Reg question, like a system as the last one? No, but it's pretty common. If you look through, like if you click, even on Google Classroom right now, there's like probably 10 exams up with answer keys. I would say probably 8 of the 10 have a system of inequalities in there, right? So that's what I'm saying, roughly 80% chance. So know how to do it. And moral of the story. With these, obviously we like to get these in y equals form. I like to do the little thing where I'm putting my 4 bullet points. So 4 things you need to know for these: slope, y-intercept, what type of line, and where to shade. If you do all that, it's like putting you on the path to success, right? I think some of you got confused with like what to do exactly or how to start. So that's what we're trying to do here. So for the top one, I'd bring the x and the 4 over to the right, and it would look like this. And then I would divide by 2. So we get this, and now I have an m value, a b value. So m would be 1/2 here, b would be 2. This would be a dotted or a dashed line, and the shading would be below. We say word association, so less than below, less than below. Okay, for my second inequality, bring the 3x over, bring the 4 over. So they're both negative now. Divide by 4. I don't need to flip in either case here because I didn't divide by negative, but that's in the back of my mind at all times with inequalities. Hey, do I need to flip? Is Mr. Rice going to smack the wall during the test? Solid line because of the equal to. And where would you shade here? Above, above. Now, obviously, you might not have a grid ready to go on, ready to graph with you, so you could just look on for this part. Do one at a time. So I'm going to start with this one. My first point is going to be 2 on the y-axis. Since my slope is 1/2, I'm going to go up 1, right 2, up 1, right 2, up 1, right 2, up 1, right 2. You'll be given a little mini ruler, so there's no issue with drawing lines on the test. And again, pick your pencil up every so often. Never do the thing with dotted lines where you erase it. Just a little messy there at the end. It just doesn't quite look right. You do need to label. I like to do it right away so I don't forget at the end. And I'm going to hold off with shading. I always like to do the selective shading. Now for my second line, this one, I'm just going to look at my 4 bullet points. This is the advantage of that technique. I don't need to, put a lot of thought into it now that I did the work. My slope is -3/4. So I'm going to go down 3. right 4, down 3, right 4. If I want some points above, I could go up 3, left 4. Or I could just lay my ruler down and trace it. You don't need to go to the edge of the graph. I know I'm exaggerating my lines a little bit, because you could always just lay your ruler down and trace as much as you want. What did I mess up? I went down 4 at some point. Oops. So down 3. I knew something looked off. Yeah, if you ever try to connect your points and they're not making a line, something's messed up. So you have these like make a line before I even start tracing it. Okay, arrows. Technically, you only need to label 1. It's not a big deal if you label both. Now, the second line was shaded above, and my purple line was shaded below. So that would look something like this. Usually we'll say, put an S in the solution region. I think I saw A one year. Just follow the instructions. And that's our system of inequalities. Sorry, let me catch up with the chat. What if you forget and you have to erase? I'm not sure. Was that about labeling? Well, graphs usually use pencil. Oh, I see what you're saying with the line type. Yeah, I mean, it's not a big deal. It just never looks quite right. It's okay, as long as the person can really tell. So I would make sure you're erasing it pretty good. There's always someone that does this question in pen and they do a solid line, and then it's very annoying. And they have to do like this thing where they add like chunky dots to it. Don't do that. Don't use pen for graphs. Don't use pen for graphs. Label all the I'm going to say label all the time, Emily, for systems or anytime there's more than one graph. Technically, you don't need to label if there's just like one thing. So if there's a question where it's like graph is quadratic, you don't technically need to label that. Yeah, what Elijah's saying is correct, but I would say just to be safe, anytime you have a system, label both. He's right, but I'm just going to say across the board, label both. Because I don't want people to interpret that as like, oh yeah, you don't need to label for a system. If you have two things, label them. Can't hurt. When in doubt, label. Even if you label for like a quadratic, if you're panicking, what's the worst that could happen? You're not going to lose points. You didn't need to do it. Okay, there was a follow-up here, just really quick. Is 0, 0 a solution, and how would we explain it? Sometimes these explain questions we struggle with, right? Like we all know, is 0, 0 an answer, that red dot? Is it a solution? Yeah, but how would you explain it? You could say it's in the solution region to the system. You could say it satisfies both inequalities, or you could even do the thing where you plug it in for X and Y into both, and you show that both work. Okay, so you have like a few good go-tos there. Sometimes they'll say justify or explain, same thing. You could plug them in, show that they work. You could say it's in the double shaded region, the solution region for both inequalities. It satisfies both, something along those lines. Go over what type of equations create what graphs. Oh, okay. So absolute value is V. I mean, we don't have very many. We have a U is a parabola or a quad. Obviously, we have linear. What else? We have exponential. Exponential I would call kind of like a J shape or like a L, like a slanty cursive L, I guess. I think of it as a J. So that's exponential. And what am I missing? Square root function, like an eyebrow. If you ever forget what these look like, what's a good thing you could do? Type it into your calculator. I think that's everything. Someone let me know if I'm missing one. I think that's most. Labeling, you could do function notation if it's in the problem. I wouldn't like for this one, Jeremy, I wouldn't like randomly be like, oh, you're f of x, because that's just you making it up. You know what I mean? So you can only really do that if they announce that in the problem. If they do, then yeah, you could just put F. Put F and G. Okay. And what's another one I wanted to do? Did I want to do that? Let's do, okay, I'm going to change this. I'm going to do a factoring completely because a lot of people asked about that. And this is something I would expect to exceed. I keep talking about like expectations, right? I know earth science had a lot of surprises, it seems, across New York State. But algebra should be very like predictable. I've had people tell me in the past, like last year, 2 years ago, maybe, where like, whoa, like every single thing that you predicted was on there. I haven't seen the test. I don't know, but I'm just going off of past like tendencies, things like that. Like, hey, last question is going to be a system. You're going to have a Lin reg. You're going to have a irrational versus rational explanation question. All these patterns, seem to continue. You're going to have a factoring completely, probably. Right? Okay. So, sorry, I have to make sure this works. Okay, try this one out. Factor this completely. So this would be a 2-pointer. Factor this completely. OKC in 6. OKC in 6. What the hell? Did everyone enjoy field day today? Kind of flew by. It was so bad. I didn't win. I think Mr. Klein won. But Mr. Klein played. I had kind of a bad throw. I didn't come out of my hand super well. I think I was 104 feet and he was like 120 or something. I got second though. I used to be able to. I won the basketball thing. Yeah, I just kept doing layups. All right, so if we're factoring this completely, what should we do first? GCF, yeah, GCF. So we have a GCF of 2 here. Sometimes it may be a variable. When you pull out that 2, this is what you get left behind. X squared minus 49. And now you want to say to yourself, hey, this means I'm going to be factoring twice. Mr. Rice told me that 500 times this year. Okay, why else would they say it? So this would get 1 out of 2, which is a very generous 1 out of 2. What could we do now with what's remaining? Dots probably going to be involved, right? I feel like this type of question, aside from just factoring completely, they like to do like GCF dots combos, right? You've seen that a bunch. I think your mock even had that. So what would be your 2 bubbles? Divide out 2s. X plus 7, X minus 7. And then always say to yourself, is there anything else I could do here? No, we're done. Don't forget about the 2 that you pulled out in step 1. It would be wrong if I just circled X plus 7, X minus 7. So the 2 goes along for the ride. Also, there's always like 1 or 2 people that do this. This loses a point, right? Because it means you didn't understand what the question was asking. You're doing like a quadratic that you're solving and you're answering it. No. We don't do that here. Just factor it and stop. They're counting that as like you didn't understand what was asked. So always follow instructions. Sounds very basic, but if I ask you to factor, factor. If I ask you to solve it, then you're solving something. This was never an equation, so why would you start randomly throwing out answers? If you did that, what happened to the 2? If I did solve it, 2 isn't involved. If this was an equation, you would just divide by 2 and like lose it. You wouldn't care about it anymore. Or what would you get? Yeah, 1 out of 2. Okay, and one last one I want to do. What is the test going to end with? Well, let's talk about this one quickly. We struggled a little bit with this one. It popped up in the packet. One of the packets we were working on last week, what was it, August 23, something like that? January 23, maybe. Sometimes these questions are given with like the little drawing of a graph. We've seen this a few times, right? It's like, hey, what's the equation? So if I give you the roots, if I say, hey, the roots or the zeros are at -3, 0, and 4, which of those equations represents those 3 roots? And they're very generous here, actually. Yeah, choice 3. Choice 3. They should have put a choice that just said x plus 3, x minus 4. I think this threw people off. The idea that a 0 is just an x. Okay, that happened on one of the practice questions we were working with last week. I think people chose the choice that just had the 2 bubbles in it. So you want that 0, which is just the variable x. If I was solving this, if I had factored this, I'd be like, all right, -3, 4, and even this is a solution. It's not a number. Where does x equal 0? When x is 0. So this has 3 solutions. Not technically a quadratic, but we're able to handle it. All right, and your test is going to end with the system, so we'll do the same here. This is a 6-pointer. You're going to want to know how to do this if you're like crossing your fingers that it won't appear. It's going to. Okay, usually money's involved. We've seen coin problems, buying stuff, soda, popcorn. What is this one talking about? Chickens and, that's a weird one. Americana chickens and Delaware chickens. I don't remember this one off the top of my head. Alyssa spent $35. Okay, she bought 12 chickens. Look at all those chickens. Okay, this one's a little weird. What are your 2 equations? What's an Americana chicken? I have no idea. So if she bought 12 chickens, that would just be A plus D equals 12. So this one has what we call like a number equation and a money equation. So that's our number equation. Most commonly, these have like 2 money equations, right? It's like, oh, Emily paid this and Joe paid this. This one has like 2 different types of equations. So now my second one is going to involve coefficients. So 3.75a plus 2.50d equals 35. Okay? And now we want to solve this. So take a minute or two. If you want to do substitution, that's fine. We do want to show an algebraic process. Juicy and fat? What? What's going on here? Chickens are ops? Yeah, I don't remember this question. I don't think I've seen this. This must have been from a weird year. Okay, I'm going to start solving it. I always lean more towards elimination, as do I feel like many of you. But if you do substitution here, perfectly fine. That would just be getting A or D by itself in the top equation. I'm going to put this equation up top, and I'm going to choose to multiply this one by -2.5. And I don't have a calculator on me. Awesome. So that's going to be -2.5a minus 2.5d equals -30. Add these together. We're going to get 1.25a. These will cancel, equals 5. And 5 divided by 1.25 is, I think I can get away with that using a calculator, 4. And then D should be 8. Did we get that? Chat, is this real? Okay. Yeah, so not a bad one. What are some other options for how you could have solved this? You could have multiplied by negative 3.75. Again, you could have done substitution. How you do it doesn't matter. Okay, this would have been in the substitution route. Hey, let me replace D with 12 minus A. Things to be careful of with elimination that people make mistakes with. Signs, messing up a positive or negative. Forgetting that like 12, for example, also got multiplied by negative 2.5. All these little things. How can I check that I did this correctly? Aside from just looking over my work, I could use matrices. We talked about that in last week's video if you want to catch up on that. Or there's some other YouTube videos I can link with just using matrices. That's, again, just a checking procedure. You could use y equals, I think someone said in the beginning, but you'd have to get these in y equals and also know which variable you're treating as y. So that might be a little messy. Someone looked up what ChatGPT. They're a mixed breed. Valued for their meat and egg production. Technically, even with elimination, you're using substitution. For COVID, was a test online. For 2020, they canceled the Regents. So if you were in my class that year, you didn't have to take a Regents, and you just automatically went to Geo. And your algebra grade was just like a slash. And then in 2021, we were a hybrid. So I had I think the most we ever had in a class, like 10 kids were coming in, and I was doing like Google Meets like this, teaching them in class. Like while I was teaching, I had my laptop open. But then for the Regents, everyone had to come in. So some kids came in for the first day of school just for the Regents. Kobe and David. Mr. Rankin said. Yeah, those kids just got lucky. Okay. And we had a little follow-up here. I guess let's finish it off. Usually these are going to have 3 parts. That's kind of like 2, 2, 2. So each Americana chicken lays 2 eggs per day, and each Delaware chicken lays 1 egg per day. Alyssa only sells egg by the full dozen for $2.50. How much money should she take in at the end of the first week with her 12 chickens? Huh? Okay. This is confusing. So she has 4 Americana chickens, and they lay 2 per day. Ooh, this is a little sneaky question. Okay. Huh. Interesting. Okay. So this is what her chickens are doing per day. So I'm using my answers from above. She had 4 Americana and 8 Delaware chickens, 2 eggs per day for the Americana and 1 egg per day for the Delaware. But there's a little sneaky trick with this. I'm proctoring the 8th graders. You're not allowed to proctor your class. I could tell you guys who your proctors are in a second. What's the trick with the bottom part? Why I'm saying it's a little sneaky. For dozen, yeah, that. But yeah, a little sneaky unit change there. Make going from day to week. So I guess I'll multiply this by 7, right, to figure out how many eggs they'll lay in a full week. That would be 70 plus 42. That's what, 112. And she only sells by the full dozen. So we want to figure out how many times 12 goes into 112. So how many full times does 12 go into 112? I believe 9, because that's 108 and change. So 9 full dozens she could sell, and she sells them for $2.50 each. So the answer to this last part should be 18 plus 4.5, $22.50. A little sneaky. Sometimes tests will have these like little 100 breakers where it's like they probably just put that there so someone doesn't get 100. Little sneaky, tough question. Usually that question's a lot easier. What is it usually for the system? It's like set up the system, someone thinks this, are they correct? And you just have to plug in to say no, they're not. And then the final part's like solve it. I would call this a little bit of a tougher one. Don't get too hung up on chickens when you're studying, but More so I wanted to go over the solving part of this. Your proctors. So it's a bunch of, Jeremy, why are you emailing me, dude? It's a bunch of random teachers. So 720 kids, you're going to be in my room. All the tests are on the 3rd floor. So 721, I don't know, 303, I think is Camerata. 22, you may be Mavro. Like in that classroom. So 720 kids, you'll have Pisa, Mavro, Montesano, and Murphy and Choi. 721 kids, you'll have Petra Ngaro. She's an 8th grade math teacher. She's across the hall from me. You might not know who she is, but she's a math teacher, which is good. She'll be able to answer some, like, she can't obviously tell you what to do, but she knows what she's doing. A sub that I don't recognize. Ezagere, Rankin. 722, you'll have Noto, Nicolados, algebra teacher, Choi, Gregory, she's an 8th grade ELA teacher, and Petrangaro, algebra teacher. Okay, and I'm proctoring 821. I don't know who's in that class, but that's who I'm proctoring. Okay. We get home field advantage. It's crazy. Okay, Pisa looks more stern. We'll go over the timing, but it's basically the same as earth science. Like, get to school by 10 whenever, 10-ish. If you come in, you'll just follow your schedule. I'll have some of the classes Wednesday morning, so I could do some last minute prep. Mr. Noto is crazy. That's true. No lies detected. Nala's in G&T. So the G&T numbers are 20 and 22. I was praying Mr. Rankin would be in the dunk tank. All right, guys. Yeah, that's going to wrap it up for me. Sorry, I'm going over 8 o'clock. Let me stop the recording.